Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Justice and Pieces guest speaker series. Today, we are joined by Stephanie. So, first of all, thank you so much, Stephanie, for taking the time and joining us. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. So I'm a licensed paralegal in the city of Ottawa. I got my diploma from Algonquin College. I graduated November 2024 and was licensed as of April 2025. Since roughly January 2025, I've been working in criminal law. I provide legal assistance services, I provide bookkeeping services and paralegal services. While I don't take on my own clients, I do work hand in hand with the lawyers at the firm and provide full support to them. And, and yeah, I mean, I'm still fairly new to the legal field, but I've definitely gained a lot of experience in the short time that I've been here. And yeah, I'm just thank you again for having me, of course. And I'm that's about it for me.
Perfect, Stephanie. And actually, this month and I think t yesterday, when everyone's going to be watching this, was International Women's Day, and the theme this year is Give to Gain. So perhaps you can share what International Women's Day means to you and all you do in the legal community.
Yeah, absolutely. International Women's Day, I mean, it's definitely it's one of those things that it's so easy to kind of just forget it's there. I find sometimes too, I don't even think about it, but when it does come up, it is one of those things that it really when you watch, videos people produce or, social media, often people are making posts about it and you realize that there's a lot going on in this world that necessitates us having stuff like International Women's Day. And it's so inspiring to see women, especially women in the legal field, who are making these posts and who are sharing their stories and what it means to them. And for me, it's a day of inspiration for sure. It's a day of just seeing these, amazing women who are you know, trailblazers in the field, and especially in law too. It wasn't always a woman-dominated profession. It is still fairly recent that women are really making a name for themselves in the field. And it's again like just seeing these absolute trailblazers of women in law being profiled and getting to learn their story and taking inspiration from their story as a woman who's in law. It's amazing.
Now, Stephanie, I mean, in particular, you're mentioning criminal law, and there's organizations that we know we've partnered with that do amazing, amazing work, like Wicked, and so maybe as much as you're talking about trailblazers, I mean, you're kind of underselling yourself a little bit because now you've been practicing, you're in criminal law, you've graduated, and there's a lot of great stuff we're going to talk about. But do you have any advice, whether it's for newly licensed paralegals thinking about criminal law, or paralegal students that may be listening? That you can share, to them about, how to sort of thrive and get through the program and get into work in the legal field and, all the other stuff that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So the big thing that I tell anyone who asks me is get on LinkedIn and network. That is how I ended up where I am today. I reached out to someone on LinkedIn who happened to be connected with my current boss, and the person I reached out to also happened to be a professor of mine. So having that connection from school plus carrying that connection over to LinkedIn brought me to where I am today. So I think if you're someone who you're not so sure about social media, I think LinkedIn is a big one to have for sure. Signing up for events. So like you briefly mentioned, Wicked is a group that I belong to. And while we don't necessarily like a lot of the events are in Toronto and me being in Ottawa, I can't go to them, but they do, like there's people they post in the listserv, they introduce themselves, like put yourself out there. If you are a paralegal student and you maybe want to watch someone do a trial, if you join groups like Wicked, absolutely, I've seen it before where students will say, "Hey, is anyone running like a summary offenses trial right now that I can go watch?" And most of the time they'll say yes because it is open court. So I think joining these groups, Networking, honestly, if criminal law is your passion, it can be in the Ottawa area a little harder to get into. It is our criminal, especially like summary offenses. We don't have a lot of paralegals who are doing those in Ottawa. So it's definitely something, I'd love to see more paralegals handling it. I'd love to see more paralegals taking on their own files. But also at the same time, if you want to take a more admin approach to it too, that's okay too. That's what I do. I'm a legal assistant and a paralegal. But I think just getting your foot in the door and just trying new things, putting yourself out there. Like if you didn't think you were someone who would reach out to someone and say, "Hey, can we grab a coffee and chat about what you do at your job?" That's even a good place to start. Like just really putting yourself out there and just trying, like not just letting the connections happen, make sure you're actively making those connections and actively trying to gain these new experiences.
Perfect. And so Stephanie, I mean, somebody beat me to the punch there. I mean, we had this plan, and I heard a couple days ago you were on CBC, so I feel like small potatoes here now. But maybe you could tell us a little bit about what that experience was like, how did that came about, and of course, it's going to lead into another conversation here I really want to have with you is the paralegal program at Algonquin. I mean, I understand that they've now suspended. I know that there was talk of what's going to happen, and there was like a little pause and is it going to happen, is it not going to happen, but so maybe you can give me a little bit more insight on first the actual appearance on CBC and that what that was like, and perhaps talking a little bit more about the underlying issue that's important to all the paralegals and paralegal students or potential students and law clerk students as well out in Ottawa and the area there.
Yeah, absolutely. So CBC was complete luck of the draw. A recruiter for CBC, or I don't know if recruiter's proper title, but they help the morning host get news stories. Reached out to me on LinkedIn asking for a phone call, just saying, can we talk to you? We're interested in possibly doing an interview on what's going on with Algonquin. So I spoke with them and it was just pure happenstance that she was just scrolling through like trending posts and seeing who had been posting about Algonquin. And she saw that I was posting stuff about letters of support and calls to action. So she reached out to me and next thing I knew that morning at 6:50 a.m. I was on air with CBC radio and it was amazing, very very nerve-wracking. But it was definitely an honor to represent the Eastern Region paralegals and to be chosen for that. And, especially I'm a very newly licensed person. I've only had my license for just under a year. So to be chosen over people who maybe, are a few years licensed, it's an honor. And
And
oh,
yeah,
sorry.
so and so tell me a bit more then about what's happened at Algonquin and
Yeah.
why it's important for the paralegal profession essentially to I mean I don't know where else they may be thinking about it, but again it's not simply line items, right? The value of access to justice, and I mean it ties into what we were just talking about. I mean paralegals are predominantly, I don't have the demographic data on hand from the Law Society, but women, right? And now there's a one big paralegal college that is not taking any more students. So I mean, there's a significant um, shortfall on potential pathways to becoming licensed. So I mean, anything you could share, all the call to actions, everything you were doing already, but to show why this is important to that we kind of talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so the thing that was so unique about Algonquin, as was actually corrected to me, by someone who teaches at another college in Ottawa, it wasn't the only 1 year program, but what was different about it than the others is it is a publicly funded, so it's publicly funded by the province of Ontario and it was Anglophone. In Ottawa, the only other publicly funded paralegal program is a French school. And then, other than that, there are privately funded colleges, which are absolutely options you can take. It was just Algonquin was the larger name college. They took quite a bit of students. I believe my class alone when we first started was around 60 students. And especially because Algonquin is such a well-known college, it meant like the connections, I guess, in the sense that if I say, "Oh, yes, I got my license or I got my certificate at Algonquin," like they know I'm talking about Algonquin College. They can make the connections and say, "Oh, so you know this person, this person." And just the fact too that again, it really was publicly funded Anglophone largest operation of the paralegal program in Ottawa. So the issue is, unless someone wants to go to a private college or if they are francophone and they want to go to the French college, absolutely. But the nearest program that is similar to Algonquin, if I'm remembering correctly, is out towards the GTA. Um, and again, if the thing about the paralegal program is a lot of my colleagues had young children and had families and were starting their careers over. To just, if you're starting your career over and you have a young family, to just pick up and move to the GTA for a 1 year program is a lot. And, it's because people are making that move. If they're moving to the GTA, there's no guarantee that they're going to come back to Ottawa. So now, because we don't, we've lost a school servicing the Ottawa area, we are potentially losing people to other jurisdictions. And Ottawa is a jurisdiction that desperately needs more legal professionals, especially in criminal law. And I would love to see more paralegals in criminal law in Ottawa for sure. So it is like you mentioned, the access to justice issues is especially because paralegals do represent infrared courts and tribunals that are historically done by self-representation. The whole point of paralegals is okay, so you don't make enough to pay for lawyers, so you get legal aid, but you make too much to pay for a lawyer. So you fall into that middle ground where you make too much for legal aid, not enough for a lawyer. And that's where paralegals kind of come in. We are the reduced fees. But if we're lessening our paralegal load, well, then people have to know, like the people in the middle are just going to have to go back to self-representation if they can't find someone to represent them. So it is certainly an access to justice issue. And it's frustrating because a call to action of the Ontario government is improving our access to justice and making the justice system easier on the participants, but then funding is being cut to colleges, which is leading them to cancel their paralegal and law clerk programs that are designed to help with access to justice. It becomes a sort of paradoxical circle of, okay, you want to improve this, but you're making cuts, which is leading to colleges doing less of this, which is leading to less improvement. So it's very, very frustrating, very unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly, as you point out, there aren't any options unless you can physically move to. I think it's Durham College, probably in Oshawa. It might be the next closest publicly funded Anglophone speaking um, similar college that is out there. I mean, and the other issue is obviously you can't join there remotely, right? The law society mandates that programs are not necessarily fully in person, but I mean there are certain courses that could be offered in certain colleges remotely, but certainly not enough to you couldn't do a fully remote program as it currently stands. So it's not as if you wanted to go somewhere else, you could simply do it remotely. You'd have to move or make some kind of tremendous commute every day and then come back to Ottawa in the evening. And I didn't even look at it that like once you've made that commitment, if you move to Toronto, let's say, I mean, you'll get probably these days a much worse NHL team on top of that, but you will, maybe find work and then stay there, right? I mean, you're not going to say, okay, now that I got my 1 year, I'm going to come back to Ottawa. So it's not just kind of a one-off. It could be a potential loss to the entire area, especially when there's government work as well that would require paralegals and a significant source of education being lost. So, I mean, anything more you can share, from your experience working in the area, studying at Algonquin, and what else could be done?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you brought up government positions. So when I did my placement, I was with the federal government. I worked for Indigenous Services Canada. I unfortunately didn't get hired back, which is why I'm here, but it works out. But it's something I was hearing because I do take on or did take on Algonquin students for their placements, and apparently even like large employers like the government weren't even taking on paralegal placements at this point. So on top of the stress of okay, what's going to happen with our program, Algonquin was also losing a lot of spots for at least on the government side of things. Like they were losing their government placements. So I know that was also something that was quite stressful in figuring out, okay, where are students going to go? But I mean, working, like I said, I'm more admin side of things, but I can't say there's really not a lot of paralegals working in the field that I do. I think that's an area in Ottawa that could really benefit from having more paralegals, especially, clients, they have a summary offense. Legal aid typically won't give you a certificate if the Crown isn't looking for jail time. But on something like a theft under or simple assault, especially, if you're someone, making a pretty average wage, you're not necessarily going to want to pay the fees of a lawyer. So if we have these paralegals who can fit that niche, that's great. But like I kind of already said, it's just it's not happening. So I don't know how we're supposed to grow these industries if we're losing such an integral part of it. And I mean, again, like with the government and their hiring cuts, like that's already a few paralegal jobs that are going away as well that are absolutely necessary.
Yeah, I mean, and part of that then is to find, other ways to supplement work, right? I mean, as paralegals, I mean, one of the things that I tell my students is like, it's not going to be simply you find like an associate position and you work there long enough and you get promoted and get raises, and it's very much having multiple sources of income, right? You can work as a paralegal, you can work in some legal admin roles, you can have some kind of side hustles that you grow, and that's probably a good point to talk about something that you're launching and have launched. And so maybe you can tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have launched my own business, Spencer Resume Review Service. Very, very new, very, still working at the kinks. We are a registered business with the province of Ontario. But basically, the reason I started it was I found I had a lot of people reaching out to me and saying, "Hey, like, I see you work in, blah 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 office. You're a paralegal. Can you take a look at my resume, give me some tips, help me figure out how I can get a job in the field." So I was getting quite a lot of that, and I realized too, like when I was doing some research, I mean, the market rate for like hiring like someone to review your resume, I was seeing some as high as like $100 an hour. Which again, if you are, fresh off the press, just graduated school, you don't have $100 an hour for someone to review your resume. So where my service comes in is it is a low cost flat rate fee for resume review, cover letter review, and then if you have any questions or you want to have a meeting with me and pick my brain about job hunting, about literally anything, it is a flat rate $30 fee. As the business grows, I may start offering different packages where, for example, like if you just want a resume done, flat rate of this, but a meeting is then this much extra. But for now, my niche is really just helping out students who are fresh out of school and just need that little bit of extra help, but can't necessarily afford, a typical cost for someone to look at their resume.
So Stephanie, I mean, nowadays, I think earlier this year there was legislation about, the use of AI in recruitment and hiring, and essentially, I joke with my students because one of the courses I have is legal communication and writing, where they have to put cover letters and resumes together. Is it written by AI, reviewed by AI? So what would you say in terms of like this generation of maybe similarly put together and similarly reviewed AI technology, the importance then of getting a resume, or is that sufficient, right? If I go to ChatGPT, let's say, and say, "Here's my resume, fix it up for me. I'm applying here." Is that good, bad, ugly? What do you say?
Um, I think it depends. I'm not against AI. in fact, when I wrote my resume, I didn't use AI completely. I wrote it myself. But if, for example, if I was trying to figure out a way like, okay, so I did this at my old position, how can I word that in a way that shows a key skill that is useful for a law firm? Well, I can put the sentence or the paragraph into ChatGPT and say, or this is a key skill about file management. Please word this in a way that shows I know how to handle complex files with tight deadlines, for example. And then it can reword it for you. So I think in that, like using it to fix small parts of the essay is great. Having it draft a complete resume for you, I mean, I've never tried it myself, but I mean, we all know AI has some hallucination issues. So my concern would be you have ChatGPT draft a resume for you. Maybe you don't look it over, you trust the AI, and then it completely generated some job or some certification you've never had before, because, you know, we've seen it happen with case law where it will hallucinate case law. So I certainly think AI is a great tool. I think it is a great tool for editing. I do not think it is a great tool for drafting. I still strongly believe that you should at least draft your resume yourself. But that being said, like a lot of it depends on the size of firm you're looking at, but larger firms do use the system, and it escapes me what it stands for, but it's called an ATP system, and it basically organizes your resumes. And it's most of the time, from my understanding, it does use AI. And the issue is, um, or not an issue, I suppose, but now that we have AI organizing resumes, they are looking for those keywords. They are looking for a more standardized resume that basically hits the points in the job ad. So who knows, maybe ChatGPT could help you come up with those keywords. But again, I still say overall, just draft it yourself first and then, you know, maybe do some editing using ChatGPT, but always, always, always review. Like always look it over yourself. Don't just trust what AI has produced for you.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like applicant tracking system or process there, something along
Something,
those
yeah.
lines. But I mean, it does raise a point, right, in terms of, if everyone's kind of going to have the same thing, then does that mean nobody is going to stand out, right? I mean, I remember when I was in law school and, we were going through these processes and I wasn't getting many interviews, but I once had a cover letter that ended with like something in hindsight, maybe foolish, but it did get me the interview, which was like, some people say I'm like a Superman. I can leap tall buildings in a single bound or something. And lo and behold, a couple places I wrote that wanted to interview because it was different, right? And so, I mean, do you have any advice for people as they put together a resume? What are some of your, maybe the Spencer do's and Spencer don'ts in resume and cover letters?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a do and a don't. So do in the cover letter, explain why you want the job. Don't do that on a resume. So often, what I see a lot in resumes, and I used to do it myself, before someone corrected me, is at the top of their resume, they put something like, objective and say, my objective is to get a job in the legal field because XYZ. Um, the thing is, what your resume is supposed to do is it's supposed to be a profile about you, like your job experience, your skills. If the employer wants to know why you want the job, likely they'll ask for a cover letter and they'll even ask in the interview and say, why do you want to work for us? The resume should be kept just a profile of you. And I always say, instead of objective, put professional profile. So you have a little category, it's called professional profile, and you just in third person, kind of third person, don't use the word I, type up a little profile about yourself, experienced legal professional who's had XYZ years of experience handling these kind of files. So just try to keep your resume just about you. Save the job for the cover letter. That being said, um it's hard. There's so many do's and don'ts, and I don't want to take up too much time. So I'm trying to like cover a little bit. Don't is a big one for me that I never realized before, because if you go and on Word and you use their templates, a lot of them have these really pretty fancy colors in them. And I used to think, I'm like, oh, that's great, like a pretty resume. But again, going back to the ATP system, they often process your resumes in black and white. So if you have this pretty colorful resume and you are writing all your words in like bright pink, it's not going to pick it up. So I think that's a big don't for me is don't turn your resume into an artwork. Some color is okay. Darker colors are fine. You know, I think like a nice red for certain instances would look fine. But I still think if you want to stand out, do it through showing like your interesting job experience and some certifications and awards that you have rather than, you know, doing it creatively. Um, I guess I'm trying to think. Oh, a big do, and I learned this at Algonquin. It's been drilled into me ever since, is uniformity and when you're listing your bullet points under each job. So if I'm talking about a job in the present, I should say managing, focusing, working, providing. If I'm talking in the past, it should be provided, worked, focused. Everything should be in the same tense, in the same style. If you have like working on this, but then in the next line you have I managed this. It doesn't line up. To keep it smooth and just to make it look a bit little more professional, don't use the word I and just make sure all those words are lining up. They're either in the present tense or in the past tense, and they are formatted the exact same way. You don't have these incohesive, you know, sentence structures, basically.
So you mentioned cover letters, and I see a lot students were like, well, they don't ask for a cover letter, so should I put one? They if I'm uploading it on um, Indeed or something like that, it just says, use which resume do you want to use? I click here, there. It's like a 10-second process once I have my resume there. Is that a do or is that a don't? What's your thought on cover letters and sort of that sort of check, submit type
Mhm.
of process?
I mean, typically for me, like I know when I was applying for jobs, if they didn't ask for a cover letter, I didn't give one. But I don't think it would hurt. You know, if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna post your cover letter, sometimes they also ask you, do you want to provide a link to your LinkedIn? Absolutely. If you have a LinkedIn, which everyone should, put that link there because your LinkedIn is basically an online resume and cover letter all in once. So I think especially as you were talking about in the age of standing out where everyone kind of looks the same, you know, if the employer isn't asking, you know, it's different if they say do not put a cover letter, but if they're not asking for it, but they haven't told you not to do it, that can absolutely be one way of standing out is, you know, providing your cover letter. Or, for example, like a colleague of mine, when she applies to jobs, she also did an interview on CBC for something. So that's what she includes when she applies on Indeed is a clip of her interview. Like, I think if you want yourself to stand out, it doesn't hurt to include things like your LinkedIn profile, your cover letter, again, unless they tell you not to.
And anything else there on these points there, right? So somebody's gonna come to you and I think it's SRRS, right? I think the initials there. Nice symmetry and mirror image there. But what is kind of what would the process be like, right? If somebody's like, look, I don't want to rely on AI, we're talking about it. I can't afford $100 an hour, but I want to stand out. I want to get the job, right? Ultimately, that's the goal for a job seeker is to find a way to get employed. So what are they going to get? Besides, we've talked about some of the options there, but what's the value for them in hiring you and going forward with the SRRS?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the big value is you know, I've been around, I've been in the job market for a long time, despite only, you know, being a brand new paralegal. I have been job searching and writing resumes and cover letters for many years. So I come with that experience. I come with, you know, the personal experience. I've been there. I've seen when I've drafted resumes, I usually draft a few different types depending on the type of job I'm looking for. And then if I notice, oh, when I use this resume, I get way more responses than if I use this resume. So I come with that experience, and for me, it's the personal touch. So I'm not typically, one of those where it's like, oh, you can only reach me by my email or you have to fill out this form. Like, no, just you can send me a personal message on LinkedIn and just say, hey, I'm interested in working with you. I like working close. And I mean, I offer those meetings. Like, if I've edited your resume and you're like, I don't know why you took that out, I'll happily sit down, whether you want to grab coffee, Zoom, phone, whatever. Like, I will sit down and have that meeting with you. My I almost feel bad with how busy the page gets after I've edited it because I'm usually leaving like every little thing is like a comment or an edit, and I'm very meticulous. I take the time and I make sure, like, even if I see a period out of place, I'm like, oh, that's something that needs to be fixed. And well, sometimes, I worry it can come across as harsh. In reality, that's just that's what you want. You want someone who's going to meticulously, you don't want someone who's going to look at your resume, do a quick look over and be like, yeah, that's fine. It's great. No, you want someone who does that very meticulous, breaks down each part, takes a very close look at it. So I think, like I said, I provide that personal touch. I provide the very nitty-gritty details of editing. And again, I think as someone who has had the experience and as someone in the legal field who also takes on placement students, so I know about interviews and I know, what I'm looking for in a resume. I feel like with all that experience, that's kind of what SS or SRRS brings to the table. But yeah, honestly, and I think again, being a big point is that it is lower than the market rate. And again, you can have your cover letter reviewed, your resume reviewed, and a meeting with me all for $30, no HST. So,
Yeah, and in terms of that meeting, again, you touched on some of the other points that you have experience in is, well, a lot of people, I mean, obviously it's like a funnel, right? I mean, people apply, people may have, be sorted into different piles, but then the next part of that funnel is then the interview, right? I mean, I don't know how much that ultimately plays a decision at the very end, but is that something, when if they want to have a chat with you, I mean, do you go over interview preparation skills? Um, and anything like that that you can offer beyond obviously the initial review of the resume and the cover letter.
yeah, absolutely. So I haven't offered that as an official part of the business yet, but I have, I do mentor meetings with people at my undergraduate university I went to. I speak with, paralegal students in the community, and absolutely, I mean, it is something I would offer for sure that if you want to sit down with someone and be like, do a mock interview with me, present me with, with some tips for an interview. Absolutely. The whole goal in this is I want to help people succeed at the lowest cost possible. So it's pretty much, whatever you need to succeed, as long as it's something I am capable of helping with, I will help with it.
And so specifically for paralegal students, I mean, again, you were in that role not too long ago. What are you finding in terms of, again, I think there's a lot of this challenge, right? I mean, the industry itself, the percentage of people who are licensed that are providing legal services is around 41.5%. I remember something like it's changed over from year to year, but around 40%, let's say, of licensed paralegals practicing in the field. Now, I mean, I don't know what the other 60% are doing. Are they working in-house? Are they working in law adjacent fields? In law firms where they're not needed to provide services. But what guidance in terms of students and going through that and then getting licensed and then wanting to practice in terms of finding jobs? Because again, you can't have the experience until you have the experience, but you can't get experience until you have a job, right, in the field. So, sort of we have that paradox there. Any advice you can share for students as they've about to finish their program or after getting the good news? I know a number of my students wrote the licensing exam about a couple of weeks ago now, 3 weeks ago. It's really flown by that they may be getting the good news later in March. And then I always ask, and then what are you going to do?
Mhm. Yeah, great question. Actually, I was just talking about this with someone who hired my services the other day. The big trap for it's not even just paralegal students, it can also be NCA candidates, but focusing on paralegal students is applying to jobs in the legal. So, okay. If you want to practice, if you want to represent clients, don't fall into the trap of applying for law clerk and legal assistant jobs. And that's not to say they aren't valuable jobs. I'm a legal assistant myself. I also went the route of a more admin rather than representing clients. But the issue that I've seen and that I've heard from people in the industry is law clerk and legal assistant roles are such high in demand roles that if you're a licensed paralegal and you apply for that role thinking, oh, they'll promote me and then I can eventually start taking on my own clients, it's unlikely. Most people I've spoken to who have had that where they applied for a legal assistant role thinking they would get promoted to taking on cases, it hasn't really happened because of that high turnover rate. And law firms are so desperate to retain administrative staff that they don't really want to lose admin staff. So I think a big thing is I can't speak to the GTA. In Ottawa, definitely I found when I was searching that entry level paralegal jobs were really hard to find. Kind of like you mentioned, a lot of them do require experience. But honestly, I mean, if you truly, truly, truly want to go in front of a court and tribunal and represent clients, I wouldn't apply for law clerk and legal assistant jobs. I would focus on roles that are offering litigation experience. And I mean, someone told me this and I thought it was a little ridiculous, but I realized how true it is even if a job says, if a job is like hard cap, we need 8+ years experience, don't apply, don't waste their time. But if it's something where it's like, oh, we'd like a year or two of experience and you are a fresh paralegal graduate, just apply to it. I mean, worst case scenario, you don't even get an interview. Best case scenario, you get the job. So I think just focusing, like absolutely focus. If you want to litigate, focus on litigation. If you want to do more, like I do, like legal assistant, law clerk work with some file management on the side, then go for the law clerk roles. But I think you kind of have to be honest with yourself. And, if you don't want to be a law clerk, don't apply to be a law clerk. Not that there's anything wrong with law clerks. We love them. They are great. But again, if you want to litigate, you have to aim to apply for the litigation roles.
Now you had touched on this earlier, speaking to that point there about don't have that's necessarily in your resume objective to find this job here type of thing. But would you have different, or I mean I don't know if anyone's come to you, but would you suggest different resumes that are set up, one for a law clerk position, one for a paralegal position where you're hoping to practice more? I mean, is it satisfactory to just have one sort of for anything, or what would you say kind of to tweaking that, or I mean we know obviously for the cover letter, but what about for the resume itself? Should you have different versions of them?
I say yes, because that's what I did. When I first graduated and I wasn't sure if I wanted to try and stay with the government or if I wanted to go private sector, I had a resume that was more catered to the government. I had a resume that was more catered to paralegal. Now, for me, the resume that I landed my legal assistant job with was a paralegal resume, but I think catering, like not catering in the senses we talked about, you don't need to put your objective on there, but tailoring it. Like if you want to apply for, let's say, small claims court, and you have relevant experience that can be tied to small claims court, that should be the front and center on the small claims court resume. But if you're applying for a job that's maybe a little more your admin assisting someone in a different area, try to highlight the job experience and the volunteer experience you have that are in that area. Like I think you don't have to change the whole resume. You don't have to rewrite the whole thing. It's more just switching jobs around. Like if you just need work right away outside of school and in the meantime you're just applying for paralegal jobs as you go, don't, if you're taking up admin work, don't give them a resume that says, well, I was in front of this court and this court. Like, no, like tailor your resume to that. So, um, Yeah, absolutely. Tailor it to the job. It doesn't need to be a whole overhaul. It can literally just be you copy the file, you paste it, you rename it, Spencer resume admin, and then you just tweak your jobs a little bit. So then even in job descriptions, like for me, for example, like with I if I wanted a paralegal role, I would probably say experience in appearing in Ontario Court of Justice remand court, experience in doing trial scheduling conferences. Whereas if I wanted more of like a law clerk administrative role, I might reword that to say supported lawyers in organizing their calendars to attend remand appearances, or scheduled for lawyers. Like it's tweaking it in that way. It's just taking the pieces of the job that are most relevant to what you're applying for.
Perfect. So, Stephanie, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us here today. I know earlier we had started with, International Women's Day and advice you would have for women and paralegals entering the profession and students. So, I don't know if you have any final words of wisdom, for whoever. I mean, whether it's students that may need your services, the resume services, whether it is words of advice for current Algonquin students who are, I don't know when the sort of axe falls down on the guillotine there if the programs finish up this summer or another year. But as they kind of navigate an Eastern or Ottawa area without that program, or at least as of now, or anyone else. I mean, and thanks so much again for taking the time and speaking with us here today.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. It's been great. This has been wonderful. I mean, I think I'll give some general advice to paralegals in general, whether you're a student, whether you're newly licensed. Um, you know, put yourself out there, be brave, really, the thing is about being a paralegal is often we get compared to lawyers a lot. And I know people in my own life do is they're like, oh, so you're a mini lawyer, right? But the thing is, we're not. We are a completely different, not completely different, but we are our own thing. And there is nothing wrong with that. And I think honestly, just being proud, be proud to be a paralegal, be strong, put yourself out there, challenge yourself. Like don't feel that because you're a paralegal that you're lesser than. Like I see it a lot where people have the attitude of like, "Oh, I'm just a paralegal." No, you're not just a paralegal. You are a paralegal and you are a necessity for the justice system. So I just think having that confidence and just walking with your head held high and knowing that you are an essential part of the justice system and you're making the world a better place is just, a little bit of wisdom to carry with you today.
Yeah, my co-founder of the Paralegal Town Hall, Justin Rochester, would like I think that's his article he wrote there. No, you're not just a paralegal. So thanks again, Stephanie. And for everyone tuning in, this month of March, we're going to focus on women who are in the legal profession that are thriving and are trailblazers, as Stephanie pointed out. And in particular, I'm trying to get as many paralegals. So if you're listening and you're interested in joining us, feel free to reach out. Thanks again, Stephanie, and thanks for everyone for tuning in. Take care.
Thanks so much.